So let me ask you a question. What makes a great leader? Is it something you're just born with, some kind of natural gift? Or is it a skill, something that can actually be taught and learned? For centuries, pretty much everyone thought it was the first one. But one man came along and completely changed how we think about all of this. Today, we're diving into the incredible work of John Adair, literally the man who taught the world how to lead. You've heard this a million times, right? It's that old proverb, the idea that leadership is this exclusive club, something reserved for a chosen few. This belief was everywhere, in the military, in business, and the message was simple. If you weren't born with it, well, you were out of luck. But then Adair comes along. Through his groundbreaking work at places like the Sandhurst Royal Military Academy, he basically said, hold on a second. He showed that this was such a limiting way to think. He argued that, yeah, sure, people have different levels of natural talent, but leadership itself, that is absolutely a transferable, trainable skill. And this was nothing short of revolutionary. It took leadership out of the ivory tower and gave it to everyone. So, who was this guy who came up with such a game-changing idea? Well, John Adair wasn't just some academic sitting in an office thinking up theories. As you're about to see, his ideas were forged in the real world, from the intense discipline of the military to the high-stakes pressure of turning around massive companies. I mean, just take a look at this career. It's incredible. He starts out in the Arab Legion, then develops his core theory at the world-famous Sandhurst Military Academy. He becomes the world's first ever professor of leadership studies, then goes on to help a company, ICI, become the first in Britain to make £1 billion in profit. Oh, and then he advises the United Nations. So yeah, this isn't just theory. His work is battle-tested and boardroom approved. Okay, so let's get to the heart of it all, the big idea that made him famous. From all that experience, he distilled leadership down to an elegantly simple model. It's a practical blueprint that anyone can use in pretty much any situation. He called it action-centered leadership, and it's all about 3 simple, interconnected circles. And here it is. Adair's core idea is just brilliant in its simplicity. He said that every single leader has to constantly juggle the needs of 3 overlapping areas. You've got to achieve the task, you've got to manage the team, and you've got to develop the individual. An effective leadership that only happens in that sweet spot right in the middle, where all 3 of those circles intersect. So, first up, let's talk about the task. This is the what. It's the whole reason the team exists in the first place. The leader's job here is all about clarity. You have to define the goal, create a plan, get the right resources, and keep an eye on progress. Because without a clear focus on the task, your team is just spinning its wheels. Next, you have to focus on the team. Look, you can have a room full of brilliant people, but that doesn't automatically make them a great team. The leader's job is to build that culture, to boost morale, to handle conflicts before they blow up, and to make sure everyone is communicating effectively. It's about creating that magic, that synergy, where the whole is so much greater than the sum of its parts. And finally, the third circle, the individual. You can't forget that a team is made up of actual people, each with their own unique needs, strengths, and ambitions. A great leader gets to know each person, supports them, gives them recognition, and helps them grow. Honestly, this is what really fuels motivation and gets people to personally invest in a team's success. So this model sounds great, but how does it hold up in the real world? Adair was convinced that you could use this framework as a lens to understand any leader, even huge historical figures. So to prove it, he took on this really ambitious project. He wrote a book analyzing the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad through his action-centered leadership model. And it was a huge success. I mean, it even won a really prestigious management award. People celebrated it because it was such a unique and fresh perspective. A top Western leadership expert applying a modern framework to a major religious figure. But, as you can probably guess, that's not quite the whole story. Like any really important piece of work, it eventually came under the academic microscope. A critical review was published that, while it praised the book's vision, also raised some pretty serious questions about its methods. And this created a really fascinating contrast. On one hand, the book was getting all this praise for its ambitious, fair-minded vision. But on the other, academics started pointing to what they saw as a major flaw, a lack of scholarly rigor in how the historical information was actually collected and sourced. The reviewers themselves were really clear about this. They basically said, look, this isn't an attack. We want to appreciate what this book is trying to do, but we also have to critically examine how it was put together. So the goal was to analyze both the vision and the execution. So what did they find? Well, the review pointed to some really specific things that, matter a lot in this kind of analysis. It noted factual errors like getting a name wrong in a historical story. It pointed out that out of 27 key quotes, only one had a source citation. And maybe most importantly, it argued that some of the sources used weren't considered authentic by experts in that field, which is a huge deal when you're building your case on historical evidence. Adair himself uses this beautiful metaphor. He says that a key point is like a grain of sand, that with reflection becomes a pearl of wisdom. What the critique was essentially saying is that for that pearl to have any real value, the grain of sand, the basic research, has to be solid and verifiable. Your foundation has to be strong. So, does this critique mean we should just toss Adair's core leadership models out the window? No way, not at all. What it does is offer a really vital lesson. The application of any theory needs rigorous, accurate data to back it up. So with that in mind, let's get back to some of Adair's most practical, timeless lessons on motivation, stuff you can actually use. This right here is just a fantastic checklist for any leader. It all starts with you. You have to be motivated yourself. Then you hire motivated people, and you treat them like individuals. You set goals that are challenging but not impossible. You have to remember that seeing progress is a huge motivator. You create the right environment, give fair rewards, and of course, give recognition. It's just a powerful, actionable summary of his whole people-first philosophy. And we're going to end on this powerful idea, a quote that Adair himself often used because it just perfectly sums up his life's work. Leadership isn't about trying to create greatness in people from scratch. It's about seeing the potential that's already there in your team and then creating the right conditions for that greatness to come out. A truly inspiring thought to leave you with.